A good Erev Shabbos. This Shabbos is called Shabbos HaGodel. The reason why it's called Shabbos HaGodel is because of a great miracle that took place on that day. What was the great miracle? Well, hundreds of thousands of Jewish men went into the marketplace on Shabbos looking for lambs or little goats. You know what happens with a great demand and not such a great volume of product? The price goes up. Suddenly, people who liked lamb and goat couldn't afford to buy it. So they asked, what's going on? And they asked, why are the Israelites, why are the Bnei Yisrael buying up all the yearling lambs and goats? So they were shocked at the answer. The Jews said, the people of Israel said clearly, that we're buying it today, we're waiting 4 days, checking it for 4 days, and then the evening of the fourth day, the afternoon of the fourth day, we're going to shecht it. We're going to slaughter it. And then we're going to make a special meal over it on matzahs and bitter herbs. And you'll be able to smell it because we're going to roast it whole. None of us will be intimidated by you, despite the fact that you worship the ram, the lamb in this month, because the month of Nisan is said to be the month of Aries, which is the ram or the sheep. Despite the fact that this was their God in this month, the children of Israel proudly showed that they were not afraid. And what is going to happen as a result of this sacrifice, they asked. Well, God has promised us that on midnight of the 15th, after the 14th day, 4 days from now, that exactly at the strike of midnight, God is going to appear and he's going to take away the souls of all of the firstborn of Egypt. That means we're all going to die, said the firstborn. They said yes. So what do you think happened? What happened was a miracle. Instead of being angry at the children of Israel who were going to celebrate their death, they began a protest against Pharaoh. The children of Israel deserve to be free, they said. Let them out now. We don't want to die. Their parents, their extended families, Pharaoh and his men blocked their ways. They began a scuffle. The scuffle became violent until many, many thousands of soldiers were killed by the firstborn. So this is the miracle of Shabbos HaGodel. For this reason, on Shabbos HaGodel, you hear all of the great Shabbos HaGodel droshes. What is the consequence? What is the essence of this miracle of Shabbos HaGodel that took place in the year 2448? 3,332 years ago. Next year it'll be 3,333. And the answer is that this is the purpose of the Torah. The purpose of the Torah is to transform the world, not to obliterate the world, not to remove yourself from the world, and not to get too involved in the world, but rather to inspire and to elevate the world, to make the world into a holy place where God will dwell. So the souls of the Egyptian firstborn sensed that this was true, and their only way of survival was if Pharaoh would let out the children of Israel, so they objected. So their souls actually were transformed into believers, into championing the righteousness of the demands of the children of Israel to be let free. The question is, why was it the firstborn who felt this? Why didn't Paro, who was the firstborn himself, feel this? So the answer is found in some of the writings of Rabbi Chaim ibn Attar, also known as the Or HaChaim. He writes that before a person dies, 40 days before he dies, he feels it. He feels that his place is elsewhere. He doesn't feel comfortable anymore in this world. As it says in the end of the Torah, Vayelech Moshe, and Moshe left. Where did Moshe go to? Rashi says he went to speak to the people of Israel. Why didn't he send a messenger? He had people who could have gone. So the Or HaChaim explains not that Moshe Rabbeinu went somewhere. Moshe Rabbeinu's soul had already left. He already felt that he was gone. So the firstborn sons of the Egyptians felt already that they were gone. And that's why they believed. Whereas their fathers and mothers and uncles and cousins and all of the mercenaries, they didn't feel it because they weren't going to be gone. Well, the question is, why didn't Paro feel it? So for that, you have to understand that a spiritual movement, a spiritual activity requires a person to agree. A spiritual activity requires a person who's looking for the truth. The firstborn had observed 9 plagues, and they felt that their souls were leaving them. They were convinced that this was going to happen because they looked for the truth. The others didn't feel it. Because they didn't feel it, they did not pursue the consequences of that feeling. They couldn't feel what the firstborn were feeling. They were looking for truth, and the truth was staring them in the face that they were going to leave. The others didn't feel that. They weren't going to go anywhere. So they were not motivated like the firstborn were. But Pharaoh was a firstborn. Why wasn't he transformed? And the answer is he didn't want to. There is an opinion that Yom Kippur brings forgiveness automatically because it's such a holy day. That's the opinion of Rabbeinu HaKodesh, also known as Rebbe. But there are exceptions to this. And one of them is if the person violates Yom Kippur. And another exception is if the person doesn't believe that Yom Kippur could bring him forgiveness. If the person is not trying to find it, if he wants to be lost, he's not going to find himself. Paro did not want to find himself, didn't want to find out the truth of the interaction of the competition of ideas between himself and Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu said there is a universal God who created everything, who's a singularity. There is no multiple gods, and they're not to be manipulated. God is not manipulatable. God is the truth. Truth is uniform, wherever it might be. You cannot go ahead and give homage to God as a bribe, no matter how many sacrifices, no matter how many prayers, no matter how many things you may study. You cannot bring forgiveness for a sin through that. And Paro did not want that kind of relationship. He wanted to do what he wanted, and he wanted to be able to bribe the God that was above him. So Paro wasn't looking for truth, despite the truth staring him in the face. So he could not be transformed. Not because he wasn't transformable, because he didn't want it. A similar idea comes to the whole idea of Pesach. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, had to go first to the children of Israel and to show them the wonders of God, to show them how God had not forgotten them and had not forsaken them. He had to show them miracles. But why did he have to show the children of Israel miracles? Why didn't he just go to Paro? Hey, Pharaoh, let my people go. And if not, you're going to feel sorry. And Paro did feel sorry at the end. So Paro's the one who can decide whether we're going to stay or go. Why bother with going to the children of Israel? The answer is, unless you believe that you are worthy of being redeemed, it can't happen. The belief that something can happen is the channel to make it happen. Without the belief of the children of Israel, nothing that Moshe Rabbeinu could do to Paro would change and make the Bnei Yisrael a free nation. You can't be free unless you think you're free, that you deserve to be free. I just saw a video from my colleague, my friend, my superior, Chassid, Reb Nosson Gurari. And he asked the Rebbe once, what does bitochen mean? What does this idea of being secure in God, what does it mean? And the Rebbe answered that bitochen means that you know that God can do anything. And therefore, because God can do anything, you're convinced that therefore God will do things for you and make it good, not depending upon your own station, not depending upon the merits that you have. But because God can do anything, therefore God will take you out of your difficulty without any problems. Unless the children of Israel, this exodus from Egypt was an impossibility. According to the rabbis in the Talmud, a servant, a single servant, hadn't escaped from Egypt in over 100 years. So how is it possible that an entire nation would be able to leave? This was something that could not be along any of the laws of nature, not even the spiritual laws, because we have to follow natural laws. There's a very famous story. The Alter Rebbe and the Berditchever, Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, with the Alter Rebbe, they were Mechutanim. One of the children of the Mittel Rebbe married a grandchild of the Berditchever, and the marriage was in a city called Zlobin, called the Zlobin Achasene. And during that time, the Alter Rebbe and Reb Leivik spent a lot of time with each other. And they were talking about the holiest and highest concepts of godliness. And while they're walking, they walked and they walked and they walked, and they came to a wall. And the wall extended for a long, long distance to their right and to their left. And they needed to go beyond the wall a few feet. So the Berditchever said, Kumechuten, let's go through that wall. Because as far as Reb Leivik was concerned, the only reality was God and godliness, and a physical wall really didn't exist as a barrier. Because if you're pure energy, pure light, you can just go in between the cracks. And they were pure lights. The Berditchever and the Alter Rebbe were pure lights, despite having a physical body. And the Rebbe said, no. We have to go around, because according to the Torah, we have to live along the lines of nature. A mitzvah cannot be done supernaturally. And so they went around. Took a longer time. So despite the fact that God can do anything, we have to follow the natural order. And in the natural order of things, this was an impossibility, even though God can do anything. So in order for this to actually take place, we had to believe that this was possible, that indeed God could take us out from a place where a single individual slave could not run away. See, I'll talk now physically. Where were you going to run to? The southern part of Egypt is a desert. Even Ethiopia or Sudan, which is right underneath Egypt, is a huge desert. There are very, very few places where you can run. The only place you can run along is along the river of the Nile. The Egyptians had fortifications. No one went through that river without being stopped. So where else could you go? You could go through the Sinai, the northern Sinai, not the southern Sinai, because southern Sinai is also a desert, desolate desert. You can't live there. The only place you could live is where there are wadis, where there is water, where there are oases, where you can have some food. Along all the oases going northeast from Egypt, there were fortresses. There was no place you could go to that didn't have a group of soldiers who would see you and return you to your masters. The only way we could get out was if we believed. What happened on the night of Pesach? What happened on the night of Pesach was that God appeared to the firstborn, all the firstborn, including the firstborn of Israel. And the souls of every firstborn was attracted to God. Oh, how they wanted to connect to God himself. The Egyptian children Their souls wanted to connect to God, and they went to God and left their bodies. The Jewish children found God in their bodies because they had just fulfilled 2 mitzvahs in their bodies. And God was there in their bodies. So when they went to connect to God, they went back into themselves. But the firstborn felt no pain. The firstborn of Egypt were happy. They were coming back home. They were going back to God. Unfortunately, Paro did not understand this. And 6 days later, he ran after the children of Israel, only to cause death and destruction for himself. He had many opportunities to change, but he refused to do so. So you can stare at holiness in the face, but unless you want to, it's not going to happen. We're at a crossroads. There's a virus that is threatening the lives of our senior citizens, and it's also threatening the lives of many other people. The numbers are staggering because the percentages of those infected has now gone up to 4 and 5%, over the 2.5% that was there before. In this country, it's almost at 4%. It's about 3.5+% of people infected. But as people go with the virus, there are more and more people that get infected, more people die. So what is supposed to be our reaction? Well, many things. The infection comes from your hand touching your face. Why the hands? The hands are the things that take and get a livelihood. And if the hands are contaminated, then it affects the inside of the person. I'm not saying that the people who died had contaminated hands, but I am saying that since the contamination comes through your hands, primarily, or breathing in bad air. So the two things are as follows. Bad air refers to bad ideology, a lack of the purity of the Torah of God, because you need to have oxygen. Oxygen is life-giving, so you have to have the Torah. You can't have pure oxygen because it will burn you. You have to have derech eretz, you have to earn a living, you have to do mitzvahs, but you have to have the purity of Torah. Torah is the pure oxygen that gives us life. If the oxygen can't reach us, then because our lungs have been deteriorated, then we die. So we have to have the purity of the oxygen, the purity of the air reaching us. How can we get the purity of the air reaching us? This is astounding, that there was a Kabbalah from the Baal Shem Tov, that when you have a plague, write a Sefer Torah. Why? The answer is, when you write a Sefer Torah, the Torah is the air. The Torah is the living oxygen. It's the source of life. And when you have a letter in a Torah that's just written for this protection, the letter of the Torah represents the life-giving power of the Torah that's connected to you. And so that even if you're having problems breathing, the oxygen is reaching you. The life is reaching you because you've connected to the source of the life, which is the letters of the Torah, the letters of a Sefer Torah. And the other part of it is watch your hands. I'm not any better than you. We have to watch our hands. Make sure that what we earn from now on is kosher. And if our hands are washed and clean, and the air we breathe is pure, because we have the letters of the Holy Torah, and we have the bitachon, the faith in God, that everything's going to be all right, then God will protect us and transform even those people who are sick. We have bitachon that God can cure them and will cure them. And God will transform their conditions to good, and we will all be able to celebrate together Chag HaPesach, and with God's help, in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, Amen Ken Yehi Ratzeh.